All right, welcome back. We're here today with Jim Kendrick. Jim is the president and CEO of Community Hospital Corporation in Plano, Texas. Jim, how are you doing today? And thanks for being on here.
Doing great, Hayes. Thanks for having me today. I look forward to the conversation.
Oh, you're very kind. Well, Jim, you've been down there at Community since 2017. And I've always kind of been amazed. Community has a really interesting model. You own, you manage, and you consult with hospitals actually throughout the country. Give us a little bit more in depth of that. Tell us a little bit more about Community.
Sure. The company was formed about 25 years ago by a group of not-for-profit hospitals that was at the time trying to give hospitals that were looking at having to sell or merge other options. You know, a lot of times hospitals were doing those activities, but they didn't do it because they wanted to. They were doing it because they had to. So 13 Texas hospitals or health systems formed this company 25 years ago. And we were formed with the idea of helping rural hospitals survive and be able to continue to serve their communities and not be put in positions where they were forced to make decisions. So that was our purpose 25 years ago. We still touch all of those spaces. We own our own hospitals. We manage hospitals. We consult with hospitals on special project work. We also have a large GPO product. We're actually a channel partner for Health Trust. So if you're a small rural hospital, you're not going to typically be able to go out and get signed up with a Health Trust organization. But our organization goes out and signs up large numbers of hospitals, groups that all together, and gives you that aggregate purchasing power as you would be a big system. So we're running about $600 million worth of supply spend through all of these aggregated, close to 100 rural hospitals, which gives them that purchasing power of a large system opposed to the purchasing power of a single facility.
Well, that's impressive. I don't think I knew y'all were that size and that many different hospitals. All right, so I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. Obviously, right now we're in the middle of a pandemic. How are your hospitals faring right now, particularly those maybe that are in those hot spots?
So the bulk of our hospitals fit in that small rural healthcare space. So we have some hospitals that have seen very small amounts of COVID patients. But they're still nonetheless majorly impacted. States like Texas that went in and said you can't do elective cases for a period of time. And if you're a small rural hospital and you haven't had any COVID cases, but you can't do elective cases, that has a significant impact on your books. Thank goodness for CARES Act and some other relief areas like that. But we also have some larger markets where we own the hospital in Beaumont, Texas, Baptist down in Beaumont. That market has been a hotspot. It is still a hotspot today. We have a lot of COVID patients in the hospital. We have hospitals in Huntsville, Texas. It's in between Dallas and Houston. Again, it's currently a hotspot. That's in the traditional short-term acute care hospital model. In the LTAC space, a lot of the LTACs chose not to be in the COVID care model. Some did, some didn't. So as an example, we have a lot of activity in the Tyler, Texas market for COVID with our LTAC, but only a spattering at other hospitals. We have one Carolina hospital that's in the LTAC space that had a lot, it's kind of spiked and it came down. And it's amazing how that happens. I think they had a large revival, a church revival in the county. It ended up causing a lot of patients that caused it. So it's amazing the rippling effects and how you can see those happen across the country.
That's interesting. So this leads into this question. I mean, obviously, you are an expert in the independent rural hospital market. I mean, are some of these hospitals going to be able to make it in 12 to 18 months, or where do you see that happening? How's that going to shake out?
Well, I think there was a Becker's report that talked about 40 something hospitals have filed for bankruptcy this calendar year. And over 2/3 of those 40 something hospitals are rural hospitals. So the industry in the rural hospital space has been challenged before COVID. So now that we're into the COVID challenges, it's if you look at what we've been able to do with our rural hospitals that we manage or own, the CARES Act was enough of a support that weathered the first curve of the problem. We've had to shut down elective cases. People weren't coming to the ER because they were scared to be into a hospital. So the downturn in business, at least for the hospitals that we were able to manage, we were able to, curtail the expenses, try to focus on maximizing all that revenue that was available through things like the CARES Act, through the payroll protection, all the different vehicles. But it looks like they're going to be okay through this first cycle. Just recently in a couple of states, they were talking about shutting down elective cases again. I know they did that they were exploring that in Texas again. Ultimately, they ended up only shutting down the major metropolitan counties. And then they, I think, came out with like 4 more after that. And it could continue to expand. But if you take a rural hospital that's in a market where they have 2 or 3 COVID cases in the county, and you shut down their elective cases once again, there's more than likely not going to be another level of stimulus equal to the past. So, we're able to weather the storm for what we've had so far. If we come out with another major state or national mandate of things that significantly curtail revenue, it's going to be a big problem. I think that 40-something number of hospitals that filed bankruptcy, that was pre-COVID. I think you have the potential of seeing that significantly more, depending on how this continues to progress. But again, that's what we're in the business for. We help hospitals make sure that they're doing everything they can to get all the resources they can from a revenue perspective, but also help them manage their expenses to a point that they'll be able to survive. And a lot of rural hospitals, that's exactly what they're doing. They're focusing on surviving. It's not like they're out there looking at their great margin that they're producing. They're out there caring for a community, providing services for a community, and they're working on cash flow projections to make sure they're going to be able to keep the doors open.
Well, I hope they can hold on, and hopefully obviously the spike will in some of these areas won't be as prevalent as others. And obviously we were talking a little bit earlier, Jim, you've had some huge success stories with some of your hospitals that you manage and consult with during this pandemic. Can you kind of give us a little flavor for that and how, what you provided for them?
Sure. Let me give you an example of, again, it's kind of the space that we're in. We've worked with the Huntsville Hospital in Huntsville, Texas. That hospital was going to go into bankruptcy. And we worked with the district that owned that hospital, and that hospital was going to close. I mean, if we were not able to get our deal put together and done, we formed a partnership with the district, bought the hospital out of bankruptcy, and we did that on February 28th. If we had not got that deal done, that hospital would be closed today. I mean, it literally, the doors would be shut, the employees would not be working, and the community would not have care. Huntsville's a good sized community. To have a sole community provider hospital go away, it would be a major impact. There's the prison system there, there's the Sam Houston University there. So there's a lot of need in that area that would have not been met had that happened. Again, that goes back to, making sure we're furthering our mission, and we're out there trying to find ways to help these hospitals survive. During this pandemic, even if you were part of a GPO, which luckily all the hospitals that work with us have access to the Health Trust GPO through us, but even if you were part of another GPO, the GPO volume was based off of your historical utilization. And then things like masks, personal protective equipment, all of that massive increase, you didn't have a platform to get that personal protective equipment in. So even in operating in the GPO space, we've had to work with our GPO, Health Trust, and our hospitals to identify what they need. And in many times, we're outsourcing the need for that to all kinds of markets. We're buying directly from China. We're buying directly from small businesses that have turn their business into a new service provider in a space they've never been before. I think we have a chocolate factory out of Mount Pleasant, Texas, that was putting together face shields, very high quality face shields, things like that innovative approach. But again, sourcing that personal protective equipment has probably been one of the bigger challenges from the GPO side of the equation. And then on the hospital side of the equation, it's the classic answer of whether or not you have a lot of business in that space, the COVID space, or not. And if you do, then you're touching your employees as well. Then you have to manage the employees. The employees are coming there, they're working long hours, they're working extra shifts, they're scared to take it home to their families. So there's all kinds of complexity that our staff have had to work through. So I'm very proud of our team on what we've been able to do. We've been able to keep our hospitals supplied. We've been able to keep our hospitals cash flowing. We've been able to keep our hospitals motivated and caring for their communities. So been a success story.
Been a great success story. I mean, in the middle of a pandemic, you've been able to help a lot and keep all your hospital, as you said, financially and clinically doing a good job. So thank you so much for being on here today. Jim, you're too kind. I know you're very, very busy, but I appreciate you doing it.
Oh, thank you, Hayes. I'm really enjoying it.
All right. Thank you so much.